I don't hear anybody who was making a bunch of noise for Jimmy Kimmel coming out and saying anything about this all of a sudden. There's a few things I want to go over, Chad. You guys heard about the autism and Tylenol from yesterday, all that stuff, right? I want to show you some dumb stuff that I've been hearing ever since the Tylenol thing got announced, okay? Sticking it to Trump. Now, keep in mind, Tylenol even announced and said this years ago, try not to take Tylenol when you're pregnant. But now that Trump is like, hey, don't do it, you have this. And it's hilarious because the memes that are coming out are great. They're like, you think if Trump comes out and says breathe oxygen, you think liberals will just hold their breath? Like, just to do the opposite of what he said. Trump cures cancer. Curing cancer is racist. We have the right to die from cancer. Like, that's what's happening right now, essentially. It's just kind of funny. There was another one where it was like, breathe more oxygen. It's good for you, from Trump. And then the next one, it shows, it was like, liberal. And he just puts a bag over his face, and he's just screaming into the bag. It's just funny, man. It's funny because it's like, unfortunately, that's what... Some of these people will do anything to just oppose Trump, as opposed to just, is it right? Does he have a point? Does the morality of what he's saying matter to anybody anymore, or do they just not care? I don't know.
It was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man.
Trump blasting the move overnight, posting his audience is gone and his talent was never there. And Nexstar wants assurance that all parties are committed to fostering an environment of respectful, constructive dialogue in the markets we serve.
Yeah, the Jimmy Kimmel thing is interesting because he comes on at the very beginning. Let me go back to the beginning here.
It takes courage for them to speak out against this administration, and they did, and they deserve credit for it.
Brother, it wasn't administration. 1, 2, you're being a hypocrite, because if you guys haven't heard about the news, chat, are they going to say anything about this? Because these companies just admitted that Biden's administration was forcing them to censor people they disagreed with. I don't hear anybody who was making a bunch of noise for Jimmy Kimmel coming out and saying anything about this all of a sudden. Nobody. Robert De Niro, AOC, Jasmine Crockett. I mean, the list goes on, right? Nobody's saying anything. But they were just complaining about, oh, the administration pulled Jimmy Kimmel's show. This is a violation. Well, 1, they didn't do that. This was all business. That's first things first. Secondly, this was actually fascism right here. Your government that you voted for, Biden's administration, was actually doing this and censoring people they did not agree with. People lost their livelihoods overnight on YouTube and all these social media platforms because they had a different opinion. Not okay, but they're not going to say anything about that. So yeah, that's my issue with this whole thing, is he's saying this, even coming out and saying what's supposed to be a heartfelt apology, so to speak. It discredits the whole thing because he's being disingenuous. He's not being honest.
Google has admitted that the Biden administration forced them to censor people. And after the work of Republicans...
Chat, what is your take on this? Because this is my opinion. Whether you're left or right, Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, I think Americans need to come together on this topic where this is unacceptable. It doesn't matter which administration, doesn't matter what side does it. This was actually the beginnings of fascism, okay? This was the beginning of it. Had the Biden administration, had Kamala Harris actually won, in another 4 years, America might have actually become an actual fascist country. They were censoring people. They were forcing companies to censor whoever they disagreed with. People lost their livelihoods because of it. Actual fascism was in play here.
They will be reinstating political accounts that were banned, and I have requested to Google to restore our episode with Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, which they removed 3 years later.
Oak Tree says in the United States, people have the right to express their thoughts and opinions freely thanks to the First Amendment. This includes speaking, writing, protesting, even using symbols or clothing to share a message. However, free speech has limits. The law does not protect certain types of harmful speech, such as threats, lies that damage someone's reputation, speech that could cause violence, or extremely offensive content. Yep, I agree. These restrictions exist to protect others and keep society safe and orderly. Every administration has censored someone or something at some point. And this is my argument. You can disagree with me if you want to. Has every administration done it? Probably. That's not what concerns me. What concerns me is the reason why they did it. For instance, when Biden was doing it, there were just people that just disagreed with how COVID was handled, for instance. You know, they had different opinions on vaccines or whatever it is. These people were deplatformed entirely. A lot of these people were people who depended on that income from these social media sites, completely deplatformed overnight. And I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. Some people weren't even conservatives. There were people just asking a question that, they didn't want you asking. So that's very different between getting deplatformed in silence for, threatening, right? I would argue that if you're inciting violence, 100%, you should be deplatformed. But if I'm asking questions or if I disagree with your opinion, I should not have to risk my entire platform to speak my mind, right? All the left were like, hey, Jimmy Kimmel got canceled. This is a violation of freedom of speech. This is horrible. This gets released. No peep. They're all quiet on it. They have nothing to say. I wonder why. It was in their favor. That's why. When this was happening to conservatives, this was in their favor. So they have nothing to say. And it's disappointing. It's sad because both sides should be able to come together and agree that what the Biden administration did is wrong. If Trump did this today, it's wrong. It doesn't matter what side you're on. This is against the Constitution. This is wrong. This is the operations of a potentially fascist government that Biden almost created.
A lot of people in this country was very divided, and people were at each other's throats. But at least we were listening to each other. There was a real debate going on in this country. But now it's the hate speech, which has gotten way too high, and we have to start reaching out to one another, being tolerant with one another.
I wish it was that easy. I agree with them. I would love for people from both sides to step across the aisle and have a conversation. It might be an uncomfortable one. You might find a lot more that you disagree with than agree with. But going back to that place where you can agree to disagree with somebody and still live happily next to them in peace without wanting them harmed or hurt or worse, we need to get back to that. Because if we don't get back to that, we know where this goes. Ultimately, this kind of environment will lead to war if the majority of people can't find common ground, agree to disagree peacefully. That's what happens.
It's it's not more than a political fight. This is a spiritual fight for the soul of America.
I 100% agree, man. Chad, the reason why I changed up my content so drastically after what happened with Charlie Kirk is because, like I said, man, I had an awakening, so to speak, like a lot of the world had after he died, because it didn't stop. After he died, we kept seeing the evil rise. People celebrating this kind of stuff. And I mean, there's nothing else to say. It was evil. It was pure evil. And I saw it. I agree with him. I agree with this guy here. It's just like something needs to change. And it starts with every single one of us, one by one, doing our part, right? Being a better person and spreading something that's not hate every day.
There seems to be a strain of this woke left who've lost all sense of humanity. And they gleefully post videos. And these are professors on college campuses. These are doctors, nurses, teachers. These are people in real positions of authority, some of them making decisions about saving people's lives.
I think what made so many of these people angry is that Charlie would challenge them. And it was about challenging themselves. In the debates that I've seen, they really can't support the argument.
What I noticed about Charlie Kirk, he did something that makes people very uncomfortable. He would challenge you to look in a mirror, to make sense of your own logic, to question your own beliefs. And notoriously, humanity's been really bad at that. So you go to these campuses, these young people, a lot of which have been indoctrinated and have no emotional intelligence or emotional discipline, and you ask them to confront these ideas that they believe. And then, they start to realize, whether they like it or not, they start to realize, like, oh man, this guy has a point. I hate him. And instead of like being like, oh, maybe I should change my ideals. Maybe I should, at least consider these things. They project anger and hate instead because people don't want to be wrong. It's strange. Like, how do you fix that with the youth? How do you fix that? Maybe from the ground up. Maybe we stop indoctrinating our kids into believing that conservatives are Nazis. That's a good start. We can We can start there. Stop calling us fascists, maybe. You know, that'd be great.
The story begins when a Ukrainian woman was fatally stabbed last month in North Carolina. The suspect is a black man, and Charlie Kirk and Van got into a public sparring match online. In the midst of all of this, Kirk reached out to Van in a direct message on X. Van says he did not see it until the very next day after Kirk was murdered.
Yeah, look, I mean, we were beefing. We were going at it online, on air, and then after he died, after he was murdered, my team called and said, Van, he was trying to reach you, man. What? Let's be gentlemen together. He says, let's disagree agreeably. And I'm watching the whole country talk about civil war, censorship, justifying murder about this guy? This guy is reaching out to his mortal enemy, saying we need to be gentlemen, sit down together and disagree agreeably. And the next day he's killed. And what he did, and I didn't even know it, was good. He was not for censorship. He was not for civil war. He was not for violence. He was for dialogue, open debate and dialogue, even with me.
Imagine if the rest of the left could just get their head out of their ass and realize this too, man. God bless you.